In the early 20th century, the motor car was a toy for the wealthy, a noisy, unreliable luxury for those with mansions and chauffeurs. But in a small print works in Northfield, Birmingham, one man had a vision. He didn't want to build a carriage for the elite. He wanted to put the British Empire on wheels. This is the story of the Austin Motor Company. For nearly a century, it was the heartbeat of British industry. It gave us the baby Austin, the car that taught the world how to drive. It survived 2 world wars, powered the British middle class through the swinging 60s, and created the iconic Longbridge plant, a factory so vast it had its own internal railway. But today, the name Austin is a ghost. The factory floors are silent, and the brand has been consigned to the scrap heap of history. How did a company that once dominated the global market, outselling even the giants of Detroit in its home turf, vanish into thin air? Was it a failure of engineering, a casualty of corporate greed, or simply a victim of a changing world? This is the epic tale of the rise and fall of the Austin Motor Company.
To understand Austin, you have to understand Longbridge. Located in Birmingham, England, it wasn't just a factory, it was a city. At its height, it employed over 20,000 people. If you lived in the Midlands, you either worked at the Austin or you knew someone who did. The Austin brand stood for dependability. That was their actual slogan for decades. While other manufacturers focused on speed or flamboyant styling, Austin focused on the honest, sturdy, and affordable. They built cars for the doctor, the school teacher, and the family of 4. Austin was the standard bearer of the British motor industry, a symbol of sensible, reliable engineering that was supposed to last a lifetime.
The man behind the machine was Herbert Austin. Born in Buckinghamshire in 1866, he was a restless engineer. He spent his formative years in Melbourne, Australia, working for his uncle's engineering firm and eventually managing the Wolseley sheep shearing machine company. When he returned to Birmingham in 1893, he brought back a fascination for internal combustion. He built the first Wolseley cars, but Herbert was a man who hated compromise. He wanted his own name on the radiator. In 1905, at the age of 39, he walked away from Wolseley and found a derelict print works in a village called Longbridge. With £37,000 in capital and a handful of loyal workers, the Austin Motor Company was born. The first Austin, a 25-horsepower model, was a high-quality machine, but it wasn't revolutionary. Herbert Austin was waiting for his Model T moment. He was waiting for the car that would change everything.
World War I transformed Austin into a titan. The company grew 5-fold, producing everything from shells and heavy lorries to the Austin Greyhound armored car. But when peace arrived in 1918, the company nearly collapsed. The massive factory was too big, and the cars they were building were too expensive for a post-war economy in recession. In 1921, the company went into receivership. Herbert Austin was desperate. Against the advice of his board, he retreated to his home, Lickey Grange, and began sketching a tiny car on his billiard table. The result was the Austin 7, launched in 1922. It was nicknamed the Baby Austin. Before the 7, small cars, cycle cars, were flimsy and dangerous. The Austin 7 was a real car in miniature. It had a 4-cylinder engine, 4-wheel brakes, at a price tag of just £165. It was an instant sensation. The Austin 7 didn't just save Austin, it sparked the global car industry. The first BMW was an Austin 7 built under license. The first Nissan was based on Austin 7 designs. Even in America, the American Austin attempted to bring the small car to the land of the V8. By the late 1920s, Austin was the undisputed king of the British road. Herbert Austin was knighted, becoming Sir Herbert, and his company entered the 1930s as a pillar of the British establishment.
After the smoke of World War II cleared, Austin didn't just return to car making, it spearheaded Britain's export drive. The slogan was "Export or Die." Austin chose to live. In 1947, they launched the Austin A40 Devon. It was modern, it was sturdy, and it was exactly what a weary world needed. But the real earthquake happened in 1952. In a move that shocked the industrial world, Austin merged with its arch-rival, Morris, to form the British Motor Corporation, BMC. At the time of the merger, BMC was the largest car manufacturer in the world outside of the United States. Austin's Longbridge plant became the headquarters of this new empire. This was the era of badge engineering, where the same car would be sold as an Austin, a Morris, or even a luxury Wolseley, with only minor changes to the grille and the badge. In 1956, the Suez Canal crisis sent gas prices skyrocketing. Leonard Lord, the hard-nosed head of Austin, detested the tiny German bubble cars appearing on British streets. He turned to a brilliant, eccentric engineer named Alec Issigonis and gave him a mission: build a proper miniature car. Launched in 1959 as the Austin 7, later renamed the Austin Mini, it was a masterpiece of packaging. Issigonis turned the engine sideways, transverse, and put the gearbox underneath it. 80% of the car's length was for passengers and luggage. It wasn't just a car, it was a revolution. The Mini became the symbol of the swinging 60s. It was driven by the Beatles, Peter Sellers, and royalty. When John Cooper tweaked the engine to create the Mini Cooper, this tiny commuter car started winning international rallies, famously beating much more powerful Porsches and Mercedes at the Monte Carlo rally. By the mid-60s, Austin was at the peak of its powers. The Austin 1100, an enlarged brother to the Mini with revolutionary hydroelastic fluid suspension, became Britain's best-selling car for nearly a decade. Longbridge was humming, producing over 300,000 cars a year. Austin was synonymous with British progress. But beneath the surface of the white heat of technology, the foundations were beginning to crack. The merger that created BMC had never truly integrated the two companies. Austin and Morris engineers still acted like enemies under the same roof. The peak was breathtaking, but the descent was about to be brutal.
In 1968, the British government, fearing the total collapse of the domestic car industry, forced a merger between BMC and Leyland Motors. The result was a monstrous conglomerate called British Leyland, or BL. It was a chaotic marriage of dozens of brands, from the humble Austin to the aristocratic Jaguar. But instead of a powerhouse, British Leyland became a national disaster. The company was plagued by militant unions, constant strikes, and a management structure that was more interested in internal politics than building cars. To replace the legendary 1100, Austin launched the Allegro in 1973. It was intended to be modern and high-tech. Instead, it became a punchline. The car was nicknamed All Aggro. It had dumpy proportions because it had to use a bulky heating system and engines from older models to save money. Most infamously, it featured a quartic steering wheel, a rectangular wheel with rounded corners. It was meant to be ergonomic, but drivers detested it. Reliability plummeted. There were reports of windows popping out if you jacked the car up incorrectly because the body flexed too much. While European and Japanese competitors like the Volkswagen Golf and the Datsun Sunny were becoming sharp and reliable, Austin was churning out cars that felt like they weren't quite finished. By 1980, British Leyland had been nationalized, saved by the taxpayer. Under new chairman Sir Michael Edwardus, the company fought back. They launched the Austin Metro, a super Mini meant to finally replace the original Mini. For a brief moment, it worked. The Metro was a hit. It was modern, clever, and patriotic. But the damage to the Austin name was too deep.
Quality issues remained, and the brand was seen as old-fashioned. In 1987, the decision was made to retire the Austin brand forever. The company was renamed the Rover Group, and the famous Austin script was wiped from the showroom floors. Did Austin Motor Company fail? The answer is a tragic yes. While the engineering was often brilliant, the Mini changed the world. The business failed because constant strikes at the Longbridge plant meant that production was often halted, leading to poor build quality. Mergers like British Leyland created a giant that was too big to manage, with brands that competed against each other for the same customers. Today, the Longbridge plant, once the heart of the British Empire's industry, is largely a shopping center and a housing estate. The Austin name hasn't appeared on a new car in nearly 40 years.